We have chosen to guard the people while we sleep. 100 steps north, 100 steps south, 100 steps east, 100 steps west. Now then, there was one who was shocked and saddened by all this. A little imp. Anju's grandmother, reading The Four Giants. Majora's Mask, Chapter 48. Skull Kid, alone. He stumbled forward blindly without a mask. The imp was still in awe as he plodded aimlessly down the mountain. Snowhead's sheer walls towered high on either side of him. Their jagged surfaces showed more rock than snow this far south. The sun kept climbing behind the clouds, dotting the mountainous landscapes in patches of shadow. The Skull Kid's face was dark, bearing yellow eyes and a beak-like mouth. He was too dazed for thought as he half fell with every step. His arms swung loosely by his sides, aloof. "I'm sore," he said to himself. The imp tried to walk with a bit more command of his body, but he was so tired. "And I feel naked, too." Without the mask, the wind stung his face. The Skull Kid stumbled out of the pathway into a wide, flat clearing. A wooden cabin sat across from a cave next to a sign that marked it as the mountain smithy. The imp tried to fly again, but he fell, as expected. He felt 10 times heavier without Majora's Mask. The Skull Kid stopped at the smithy's sign. He stared at it for a solid 5 minutes. "Have I been here before?" he wondered. Unfortunately, there was no voice to answer him. So, the imp had only one choice. He broke the silence with maniacal laughter. Then he thrashed his arms about like they were feral snakes and sprinted away from the cabin. Soon the imp was headed further south again. He didn't stop laughing until he was out of breath, and he didn't stop waving his arms until his shoulders hurt. The silence was a little more bearable now. "Don't forget that," he thought. "Whenever you feel lonely, just laugh, and then you'll feel all better." Once he caught his breath, he tried laughing again, but it didn't work that time. The loneliness got even worse. "Where am I going?" the Skull Kid asked as he climbed down a cliffside. No one answered him. "Where am I going?" he asked again. Still, nothing. "Where do you want me to go?" He continued hiking south and asking his questions, but Majora never graced him with its wisdom. Eventually, the path widened, and he could finally see the first signs of green. "Where do you want me to go?" he yelled. A scream answered him. The Skull Kid's head instantly looked further down the path. He ran, even though it hurt and felt awkward. The scream reverberated again, and the imp stopped, realizing it came from below. The pathway turned into a wide, icy bridge, and underneath, a deep gorge was surrounded by rocky walls. The imp knelt to look beneath the pathway. A wagon lay at the bottom. It was in ruins, but he could still read the millers stitched into the tarp. Shattered wood was everywhere, and he saw the bloodied body of an adult male contorted and motionless. The corpse of a horse was there too, and a Tektite dined on the poor steed for its breakfast. He caught movement elsewhere, however. The imp saw a small girl caught beneath one of the wagon's wheels. The wreckage blocked most of her from view, but the Skull Kid could tell she struggled to free herself. She no longer screamed, however, and the imp thought a threatening stare from the Tektite had seen to that. She was trapped mere feet away from the monster. The girl was pale and small, shrunken as she tried to free herself from her family's destroyed caravan. Meanwhile, the Tektite kept eating, confident that its secondary snack could not escape on her own. "That Tektite will kill her once it's done with the horse," the imp thought. assuming other Tektites didn't arrive to steal the bounty. The little girl, her long brown hair matted and dirty, looked up and noticed the imp staring down at her.
Help!
She screamed. She could not have been older than 6. Her dress was torn and covered in dirt and blood. The imp cocked his head to the side as if he too were a child.
How interesting, he thought. She wants me to help her?
He wanted to watch and find out what would happen.
What do I do?
He asked, but the mask wasn't there to tell him.
Help me! Help me!
The girl cried out. The Tektite looked up from its meal, the angry red eye finding her. It took a tentative step toward her, debating whether it could abandon the horse meat safely.
Please!
The Tektite made up its mind and scurried toward her.
No! Papa, help!
The only other human in the ditch was dead, though. The Tektite raised its pointed leg to kill her. But the Skull Kid drove a piece of wood into its soft underbelly first. The Tektite collapsed as it bled out, and the girl lowered the arm she'd risen to protect herself. She panted, looking at the imp in frayed clothing who was now also covered in monster blood. His frayed clothing was yellow and orange, and a strange witch-like hat adorned his head. The Skull Kid tried to lift the wheel off the girl, but it was heavy and wedged within the rest of the debris.
Thank you,
the girl managed, though she sounded weak. As he kept pulling on the wheel, the Skull Kid wondered why he'd saved her.
The mask didn't tell me to.
He realized he made that decision for himself, and so he kept going, pushing the wheel away with one final tug. The girl was now free. The little girl winced. She scooted away from the wreckage, and though her arms and legs were bruised, her hand traveled to her stomach, where a piece of debris was wedged through her dress. The spilled blood seemed thickest there.
It hurts,
she said weakly. Her eyes shone, and the imp realized her paleness was not normal. The Skull Kid lifted her into his arms easily. The girl clung to him for safety, resting her head on his shoulder. The Skull Kid climbed out of the ditch and returned to the path. He continued his journey out of Snowhead.
I can't feel my fingers,
the girl said. A tear rolled down her cheek as she pressed her face against her savior's chest.
Clocktown can help you,
he said resolutely. The imp walked toward the village with the injured girl. The moon hovered dangerously over the town in the center of Termina. It was close. Only 44 hours remained. Many, many years ago, the Skull Kid waited from behind a tree. He peered around its trunk, secretly watching a man walk down the forest path. The man was hooded, and the forest trees cast dotted shadows over his cloak.
I've got him,
the imp thought gleefully. The woods of mystery were the Skull Kid's specialty, though. Every stranger that passed through was subject to his pranks. The imp giggled as he scaled a tree like a squirrel, jumping from branch to branch until he was ahead of the traveler. Then, the small forest child timed his fall so he crashed atop the man. The stranger fell to the ground with an oomph, and the Skull Kid scrambled off him, laughing all the while. The imp's victim sat dazed for a moment, his hood fallen and his cloak dirty.
Ha! I got you!
The imp exclaimed. The man's robe was dark green, and lush white hair framed a face with sharp features. His emerald eyes were bold, and though his white hair implied age, his cheeks and forehead were free of any wrinkles. The short, slender man eventually looked up at the imp, and soon his shocked wariness gave way to smile. "Be glad you caught me in a good mood, Skullchild," the man said. The imp retained his smile as he offered a hand to the stranger. The green-clad man took it. As he stood, the Skull Kid noticed a medallion pinning the man's cloak together. It was as green as the forest, rivaling even the lush leaves of Termina. The man brushed the new dirty from his cloak. What compelled you to knock down a strange man like myself? The Skull Kid had his answer immediately.
It's fun!
He backflipped onto his hands and bounced off his palms a few times. Then he twirled back onto his feet and flashed another smile. Farron, the man said, my 3 brothers and I are named after dragons that lived long ago.
Dragons?
The Skull Kid exclaimed. His eyes widened eagerly.
Here? In Termina?
No, we're from a distant realm. Far, far from here. The imp's eyes widened even more, as small as they were, dotting his innocent face.
What's that world called?
Hyrule. The imp smiled, looking to make sure no one else was watching.
I want this interesting man to myself,
The Skull Kid thought.
Can I come with you? Can you tell me all about Hyrule and these dragons?
The imp paused, looking along the trail where the man had been heading. Yes, I am, the mysterious white-haired man said. Woodfall is proving quite unwelcoming to travelers, but my older brother is headed to Skyvale and the other side of Snowhead, so I imagine he's having an even harder time. The imp nodded.
Yes, I hate the mountains. There aren't as many trees to hide behind.
Farron smiled. Would you like to accompany me to Oak Ridge? The Skull Kid leapt excitedly, barely containing himself, until he saw Farron standing there calmly. The imp straightened himself and cleared his throat, ushering them onward.
Shall we?
Farron nodded, and they were off. The Skull Kid waited for the old yet young magical man to speak first, but Farron merely walked in silent contentment.
This won't do,
the imp thought.
I want to know more about him.
The Skull Kid cleared his throat again.
So, what brought you to Termina? Termina has lots of places, but I don't think I've ever met someone from another realm.
Farron's smile faded. We brought powerful magic, and it escaped before we could seal it away.
Escaped?
The imp said, cocking his head to the side curiously as they walked.
Why did you want to seal it away?
Because it's a terrible, dark thing, whose magic we will never underestimate again.
Why is it so dark and powerful?
Because the name that brought it into this world was a powerful one.
What name?
Farron shook his head as his smile returned. We'd best not spread it around, saying it only gives the demon more power.
Demon? Why would you bring a demon with dark magic here?
Farron furrowed his brow. You sure ask a lot of questions, don't you?
Yeah,
the imp said.
It's not every day I meet a stranger from a distant realm named after a dragon who brought a magical demon here.
Good point, Farron said, sighing as he relented to a longer story. The demon is bound to a magical item, and we brought it here to prevent the monster from destroying all realms. Termina has a special capacity to repress the demon's powers, but we were still afraid. So, me and my 3 brothers came here to make sure the dark token can't break out, and to protect this world from it. The Skull Kid narrowed his eyes.
He's not telling me the whole story,
the imp thought.
Why couldn't you just seal it away in the realm you are from, Hyrule?
Because the magic here is powerful, rivaling even the power of the demon's stolen name. We hoped Termina would keep it at bay, and we came here to ensure that was the case.
And it's already escaped from you?
The imp asked. Farron's expression darkened. Yes, but it can't wreak the same havoc it did in our world. Its magical powers should be muted here. The Skull Kid stopped walking. He suddenly felt afraid. He took in the sense of a forest he'd known his whole life, savoring its teeming life and the gentle breeze, heavy with water and moss. The imp wasn't sure Woodfall could do anything to stop dark magic from infecting it. Then, Farron placed his hand on the Skull Kid's shoulder. He looked up, and they were face to face. Farron's green eyes shone with empathy. "Don't worry, Skullchild," he said. His voice was so reassuring. "We will find the magical item before it can do anything horrible." The imp considered. He decided to trust this man with all his heart.
If you came here to guard it," the Skull Kid said, "and can cross realms and steal items, then you must have magical powers too!"
Farron replied by raising his hand skyward. The emerald holding his cloak together glowed, and their section of the dirt pathway gave way to long green stems. They rose from the soil and twisted with life, sprouting leaves and flowers. The Skull Kid's mouth dropped in awe as suddenly, where there'd only been dirt, a stalk of red, blue, and yellow flowers opened to greet the warm spring day. A small garden had been born before his eyes.
That's amazing!
The Skull Kid said, leaping excitedly again.
Can you teach me how to do that?
Unfortunately I can't, Farron said, motioning them onward. I couldn't do it without this gem, and I can't ever let anyone else use it. I'm bound to it, and it's bound to me, forever.
That's crazy!
All of the members of my tribes are sorcerers and witches with gems like these. Wait until you meet my 3 brothers. They have different powers than I do.
Wow! You'll really let me?
Of course, Farron said. We're friends now. The imp smiled.
Are you and your brothers the only ones from Hyrule here?
No, Farron said, suddenly cautious again. 2 witches in my tribe threaten to follow us and take the item for themselves, but they'll never be able to find it. The spell we use to send the item here stops anyone with a corrupted heart from taking it, and the same spell managed to bring us here under its protection. Those witches, if they stay here too long, will soon forget why they came here, and that they're from another world.
Why?
I told you, this realm has powerful, powerful magic, and we would be victim to it too, were it not for our spell. The Skull Kid paused, looking off and thinking hard.
I can't believe I have a friend now,
the Skull Kid said. His smile was so wide, he couldn't contain the happiness that wanted to burst free.
Especially one so powerful. I'm glad I attacked you.
I'm glad you attacked me too. You're the first friend I've made since I came here. The Skull Kid looked at the large garden of flowers again, already disappearing from view behind the trees. Their colors were vivid, brilliantly shining in the dotted sunlight. The present. Rain bombarded them from a bleak sky, spilling off the 2 children onto equally bleak stone. The Skull Kid passed through a hole in the chunk of ice blocking the road. Someone had blasted through it.
Not the boy this time,
the imp thought. He walked quickly, holding a young girl who dangled limply from his arms. She was even paler than before, and her eyelids fluttered against the rain. She looked like a ghost.
Thank you for carrying me,
she said softly, still resting on his shoulders. The raindrops glowed on her small white cheeks.
We're almost there,
the imp said, walking down the pathway that curved into a gorge. He would have to climb the giant stone wall to determine a field, and then walk to Clocktown. Halfway into the gorge, he stopped and noticed large, lizard-like creatures who slept, the dongos. Their tails were spiked, but he knew they could kill them with one fiery exhale. The Skull Kid looked down at the injured child in his arms.
You have to be quiet now, okay? Okay,
she whispered, weakly bringing a finger to her lips. The Skull Kid smiled, tiptoeing around the dodongos. His padded shoes hardly made a sound against the torrential rain, squishy and soft against the mountainous ground. The imp took a direct path to the wall, walking between 2 of the sleeping giants. And then the girl moaned in his arms. The Skull Kid froze. But once a few moments passed and neither lizard had stirred, the imp continued. The girl hung heavier with every second, her grip around the imp's neck weakening. The wood that had been driven into her stomach continued leaking blood. The bottom half of her white dress was now a dark red. The Skull Kid made it to the wall without incident and climbed as expertly as always.
You have to grab onto me,
the imp said. The girl tried her best, summoning what strength she had left. Eventually, his foot met wet grass, and they'd finally reached Terminal Field. Clocktown was in sight. Its northern gate was just across the plain. The girl moaned again, and then her head lolled to the side. Her eyes seemed so shrunken, yet despite it all, she managed to smile.
Can we be friends?
She asked. A great bundle of sadness stirred within the Skull Kid's chest. It made him want to cry. He ignored it, walking as fast as he could toward the village. Many, many years ago.
I don't remember, Levias.
The Skull Kid grew impatient, drawing his knees up to his chest in protest. The imp sat with a white-haired man on a patch of dirt in Termina Field. The gorge leading to Snowhead was just beside them, and an old bridge spanned it to allow passage into the mountains. The only visible snow was on Snowhead's highest peak, which seemed to scrape the sky impossibly far away. Spring was nearing its end. The day was dark and cloudy. Not a single ray of sunlight broke through. Just think about it, the man said. His face was wrinkled, and he had a bushy white beard. Golden eyes glowed fiercely despite his age, shining against the dark gold of his cloak. His gem, however, didn't glow as brightly as it used to. Concentrate. The Skull Kid stared at the symbol drawn into the dirt. It was a strange diamond flanked by two swirls.
Treasure?
No, Levias said, shaking his head. Wonder.
I don't want to learn stupid symbols anymore,
the Skull Kid said, jumping to his feet and kicking the dirt. It fell over the man's drawing and erased it. Levias sighed, discarding the stick in his hand. The imp fumed, forcing himself to look away from the old man. I bet you remember this one, though, the old man said. The Skull Kid knew what he was drawing without even looking. The man in the golden cloak drew a crescent moon into the dirt, along with two lines that slashed through it.
I know,
the imp said.
Love, friendship, happiness, blah, blah, blah. Your silly old language. Why are you acting so strange lately? All of you!
The imp motioned toward a group of people who'd begun to join them across Snowhead's bridge. They each wore cloaks and gems of their own, one green, one red, and one blue. All their faces were wrinkled, and all their faces were framed with long white hair and beards.
You've been getting all old lately. I thought that wasn't supposed to happen. I thought you came here under a protection spell.
We did, Levias said, standing. But things have changed, Skull Kid. Oak Ridge is gone. It burnt to the ground. All of it. Have you forgotten?
What's Oak Ridge?
The imp asked, his brow furrowed with more confusion and anger. Levias balked. What do you mean? His three brothers joined him, each looking suspiciously at the Skull Child.
I've never heard of that place before,
the Skull Kid said.
Is it from Hyrule or some other realm?
The four brothers exchanged worried looks. This infuriated the imp more.
No! Stop that!
He stamped his feet into the dirt. He could feel them drifting away, like all his friends did. He couldn't lose them too.
Not after all these years,
he thought. It felt like forever ago that the first brother had created a garden in Woodfall.
This is about the magical item, isn't it?
The Skull Kid asked.
That's the thing you guys refuse to talk about, no matter what.
Skull Kid, It burnt down Oak Ridge. All of it. And you've already forgotten the city ever existed. We can't stop it anymore. We have to. We can't be here anymore like this. We have to.
No!
The Skull Kid said.
You're lying, all of you. I know it! Oak Ridge isn't even real, I bet!
It was real, the one with the red gem said.
Then why have I forgotten about it, huh?
The imp said. We told you, the one with the blue gem said. This land has strange powers that we don't truly understand.
No! Not that again! That's the answer you always use!
It's the truth, Farron said.
I don't care! You guys are leaving me, aren't you?
None of them responded.
Levias? Eldon? Nehru? None of you?
His eyes then found the green ones that struggled to meet his own. To Farron's credit, he never looked away. The Skull Kid walked up to him until they were an inch apart.
You're my best friend in the whole world!
The imp yelled.
I met you first! Are you leaving me?
Skull Kid, things have changed, Farron answered calmly. Despite everything, the imp found his voice to be reassuring. The imp backed away, but he didn't like relenting like that. He wanted to stay angry at them. Look at our faces. They're old. We're weaker. The magical item is stronger than we thought.
Then seal it away!
The imp said, repressing tears that threatened to come.
Please! Do what you came here to do in the first place so we can still be friends! They hate me.
The imp thought.
I just know it. They're all lying.
We don't know how, Farron said. We have to cast another protection spell, Skull Kid. A different one. We have to sacrifice our gems and become one with this land. We have to make the 4 regions here just that. 4 separate lands.
What?
The imp backed away, his eyes wide in terror.
No. No, no, you can't! What'll become of you?
We'll become Terminus' true guardians, Farron said. But we only have enough magic to protect Clocktown, Woodfall, Snowhead, Great Bay, and Icona Canyon. We can't stop the magical item from destroying the other lands, but these 5 regions have to be our priority. They are Termina's heart. If the demon destroys these places, it will escape and destroy all the worlds. Termina is more important than we thought. We shouldn't have brought the demon here in the first place.
But then we would have never met!
The Skull Kid said, screaming. Skull Kid, Farron said, placing his hand on the imp's shoulder. Our time together has meant everything to me, but we have a bigger responsibility to Termina, to everyone. If we don't do this, all these lands will burn, and if Termina falls, nothing will stop the rest of the worlds from burning too. We have to go to each of the temples and cast the spell together and sacrifice our gems. The imp tossed Farron's hand away. The tears finally fell, and the Skull Kid's balled fists shook by his sides.
Will I be able to visit you?
He thought he already knew the answer. We won't be the same, Farron said. We'll only be able to leave the temples when Termina is in great danger. We left a song with the mayor of Clocktown, one that he can play to call us whenever he needs us. Farron exchanged a worried glance with Levias, and the imp noticed.
They're afraid the mayor will forget the song, aren't they?
The Skull Kid thought bitterly.
They think all of us Termina people, are less than them. They don't like us. They think we're stupid. Can you teach me the song?
the imp asked, trying in vain to hide his returning anger. Skull Kid, we won't be the same, Farron repeated, taking a step toward him. We'll be gods, deities. We won't be people anymore. We don't know what form we'll take, but it'll be the form we need to be for the rest of eternity, to protect Termina.
No!
The Skull Kid shoved Farron away.
I can prove you're lying. Do you remember the garden you made in the forest the day we met?
Farron didn't respond.
You said those flowers would be bright, beautiful, and alive as long as our friendship was true. As long as we all still loved each other. Just like that symbol you always show me. With the crescent moon. Love. I bet if I go there now, the flowers will be dead.
None of them responded.
I'm right, aren't I?
He still shook with rage while he cried. Skull Kid, we have to do it tonight. We don't have time to...
No!
He pushed Farron into the dirt, erasing the half-drawn crescent moon. Farron scrambled to his feet as the imp ran, but the Skull Kid was already out of earshot. He ran as far as he could toward Woodfall, tears burning across his cheeks. He refused to turn around, refused to look at those stupid men in their stupid cloaks, all standing behind him, talking about how they were going to leave him, making up lies like Oak Ridge so he felt smaller.
I'll show them!
His feet carried him around Clocktown and into the southern swamp. His shoes crashed through the pristine waters of Woodfall, and then they barreled through the woods of mystery on the other side. The sun slowly inched across the sky as his journey continued. Daylight slipped away, along with every tree he passed. Eventually, the Skull Kid took a break. He paused out of breath as he took in the forest. Something was different about his old home. He could feel it. He wanted to turn around and leave. He was afraid of what might lie on the forest's other side.
I don't remember being afraid before,
he thought. What exactly had been on the other side of these woods? He couldn't remember, but he didn't want to find out. The imp pushed those thoughts away. He fought against the strange feeling until he found a dirt path at the forest's edge. The road was overgrown, and it was hard to remember exactly where he'd met Farron. But eventually, he found an exceptionally large collection of plant life in the road's center. It was black, dry, and hung limply toward the ground. Weeds had overtaken it, yet despite the years, he recognized the decayed petals that once held so many colors. The Skull Kid fell to his knees before the dead flowers. The present. The girl's head lolled as the rain pelted her pale body. She squeezed her eyes shut to keep the water from her eyes. The Skull Kid, meanwhile, stared straight ahead while he walked. The northern gate stood tall, flanked by Clocktown's immense walls and manned by a guard.
Why is the guard outside?
The imp wondered. They usually patrolled from within the city walls. The guard watched through his drawn visor, spear in hand, as a small skull child carrying a dying girl ran through the rain toward him. The Skull Kid hardly paid him any mind, moving to enter the city as soon as he'd climbed the stairs. But the guard cut him off. I'm afraid I can't let you in. The imp backed away uncertainly. The girl kept her face nuzzled into his shoulder and her eyes closed. The guard was tall and strong. His armor glistened. He was a mighty sentinel to defy two wet, scared, and injured children.
Please,
the Skull Kid said, gesturing to the girl. Her blood-stained dress and pale skin should have made their emergency obvious.
She will die. I need to find help.
The guard's authority never wavered. Find help elsewhere. I'm not admitting you to the city.
There's nowhere else to go,
the imp said. I'm under strict orders to forbid admittance to Clocktown, without exception.
Why?
The guard paused. The mayor and his wife are dead. They were murdered last night, and we suspect foul magic at play. No one can enter the city, no matter how innocent they seem.
Murdered?
The Skull Kid didn't understand. He, the boy, the shadow, and the fairy were the only ones capable of altering a timeline's events.
Surely the boy and fairy couldn't have done this.
Yet they were the only possible culprits. Something didn't make sense.
How?
Even from behind the visor, the Skull Kid saw the guard's face turn as pale as the girl's. They were ripped to pieces. No one has ever seen. He paused, swallowing to hide the weakness he'd shown. Never mind that. You must leave. Ask the gods for help if you must, but I will risk no one in Clocktown to such a fate. The girl managed to open her eyes. They fluttered against the water and still shone so fiercely blue. The Skull Kid saw them and began to shake. Rage flooded through his veins now.
He's going to let her die,
the imp thought.
We won't rip anyone to pieces,
the Skull Kid said. Though his voice wavered with malice against his control, he didn't sound convincing even to himself.
This girl is dying. She needs help. Please.
I said go! The guard thrust his spear out threateningly. The Skull Kid barely avoided it, stumbling backward with shocked zeros for eyes. The Clocktown guard met the children beneath him with only malice. So the imp ran. He sprinted through the growing onslaught of rain and around the city's perimeter.
I have to find shelter,
he thought. The girl's eyes shut tight against the storm while the Skull Kid sprinted for the only shelter he could think of. Near the entrance of Woodfall, he stopped at an overturned log, the same one where he'd met two fairies so long ago. Soon, he passed from drenched grass onto a slightly damp wooden floor. The rain echoed against the wooden ceiling, and they were still so wet and cold. The Skull Kid lay the girl gently on the grass against the shelter's rounded wall. However, she didn't seem capable of supporting herself. The girl slid limply to the ground.
No. Oh, you have to sit up,
the imp said.
You have to get better so we can be friends.
He grabbed the little girl by her shoulders again, but when he lifted her, her head still refused to stay upright. He watched her slide lifelessly against the wet wood a second time. At first, he merely stood there. Her mouth was agape, eyes closed, skin starkly white, and dress drenched in red. The rain pattered loudly against her makeshift home. Otherwise, the deathly silence gripped the imp's chest like a dagger.
How do I bring her back?
The Skull Kid asked. Only the rain answered.
How do I bring her back?
He asked again. Still, no one was there to tell him what to do.
I was supposed to save her. How do I bring her back?
She looked peaceful, almost. He wondered if she was still in there somewhere, or if all that was her had slipped away, lost to the damp, heavy breeze that chilled Termina with despair. Then, the Skull Kid screamed. His fists shook with rage. He thrust his hands out and was shocked when purple flames burst forth. They died quickly. But the imp didn't usually possess magic without Majora.
How is that possible?
He thought. He observed his empty palms, remembering.
The girl was helpless under that wagon,
he thought.
Something made me want to save her.
And he'd failed, only to feel terrible. However, as soon as he'd tapped into something different, something much more malevolent, he'd received power. Anger, rage, hatred. Apparently, some of Majora's magic was still within him. He looked past his outstretched hands at the dead girl. Her face innocently rested on the grass, as if she were asleep. The rage boiled within him again, and the imp left the girl behind. He ignored the rain as it pattered on his face. Fury was enough to protect him from the cold as he approached the southern gate. The guard saw him approaching and slammed his spear down in authority.
Halt! I'm afraid I can't...
The Skull Kid shot his arms outward, and purple fire rushed forward. It enveloped the guard. His skin was immediately aflame beneath the heavy metal armor. His suit turned red, searing with unimaginable heat as it became an oven, cooking its host alive. He screamed, dropped his spear, and scrambled for the straps fastening his uniform together. But he was a purple torch now. The Skull Kid watched as the guard ran into the rain, flailing as he failed to remove his helmet. The rain did nothing to quell the dark heat, and the officer's screams were bestial. The Skull Kid didn't like how terrible they sounded. Every time he pictured the dead girl, the anger returned to him, and he found more fire circling his hands. He cast another spell at the guard, hoping to end his terrible screaming. He was successful. Soon, another corpse lay in the rain, though this one's death had been far more agonizing. The charred officer of the law had issued his final command. The Skull Kid had avenged the girl's death. The terrible evil this man had committed could never happen again.
But it was the Northern Guard that stopped me from entering.
He realized too late.
But this guard probably would have done the same thing.
He walked past the corpse and entered the log again. The girl still lay there, unable to scream herself. They found purity in death, both the guard and this innocent. There was no more pain. They were dead, and because they were dead, they were flawless. The imp's desire to be friends had almost stolen her away from this gift.
Just like Majora taught me,
the imp realized. It had tried so hard to teach him death's beauty, but he hadn't truly understood until now. The Skull Kid left the log, looking over Clocktown's expanse to see the tallest peak of Snowhead. If he waited any longer, the last of Majora's magic within him might fade. His chances of earning forgiveness would grow more futile, too. He turned back to the young corpse beside him.
"No one can be my friend,"
he said, brushing away the only tear that came.
"They all leave me. Friends are imperfect."
He smiled as he set off for the frigid north. He would spend the rest of his days serving the one friend Majora had introduced him to, death, because unlike the scared, vulnerable children scurrying beneath the moon, death was perfect. Many, many years ago, the Skull Kid walked into the southern swamp, fists still shaking. He couldn't find Farron, Eldon, Lanayru, or Levias anywhere. For days he had searched, but Farron had stayed true to his word. They'd left and cast their stupid protection spell. Now everyone in Termina was protected. But it didn't matter. The imp had discovered a way to summon them again. The Skull Kid climbed the ladder to a hut surrounded by swampland. He swung the door open so it crashed dramatically against the wall. A woman leapt in shock to face her intruder. She seemed a lot like the four brothers had, with her darker skin and shining eyes. Her hair was white and stuck straight up, and her face was newly wrinkled.
"Farron said the witches here forgot their past,"
the Skull Kid recalled.
"Or remember some warped version of it."
They might recall fleeting memories of their tribe and its history, but they would forget the nature of their new home, this realm called Termina. But the imp didn't care. He'd come here for one thing. The dark red gem on her forehead glowed brightly.
"Who are you?"
the witch asked. The Skull Kid threw a Deku nut at her feet. There was a flash, and the witch shielded her eyes, shrieking as she fell. The imp was already upon her, grabbing the gem and ripping it from her forehead. The witch's shrieking grew. The Skull Kid watched as her face rapidly began to wrinkle more and more. All moisture left her body as she shriveled, becoming a living corpse that felt the weight of 100 years, all at once. Eventually, it stopped. and the witch lay immobile. Her breathing was harsh and ragged, eyes staring emptily forward. She no longer had the strength to stand. Breathing took every ounce of willpower that remained.
Well, that was easy,
The Skull Kid said. The witch gave no response as he turned and left. The imp climbed down the ladder and stepped into the swamp. He took a deep breath as he clutched the magical ruby, allowing the power to course through his veins. Then he thrust his arms forward and brilliant orange fire burst forth. He was alive, curling like a great wave as it obeyed his command. The imp watched in awe as the spell slammed into a nearby rock wall, obliterating it. He hadn't meant for the blast to be so powerful, but he smiled. The imp continued practicing his spell work, blasting rocks and patches of swamp life with red-orange flames. Each conjuration reflected off his eyes, casting shadows across his smile as he savored the destruction. Woodfall swamps became Woodfall's forests, and then Termina Field was soon set ablaze. Even though Clocktown's residents heard his path of destruction long before it arrived, they could do nothing to defend themselves once the imp came for them. The Skull Kid unleashed his wrath upon the capital. Buildings exploded. Stalls were destroyed. People ran and screamed. The Skull Kid sent fire everywhere, destroying everything. None of the guards could stop him. When they tried, he scared them away with magic and forced them to drop their spears.
Play your stupid song!
The Skull Kid yelled as he stood in the center of South Clocktown's plaza. The red gem glowed furiously in his hands as he destroyed.
Call your guardians! Bring them here to protect you!
He stopped when he finally heard a song. The Skull Kid turned to the sky, listening as a deep melody cut across the land. It ruptured Clocktown's crackling embers with soothing notes, somehow as disruptive as it was calming. He tried to find its source, but couldn't. Eventually, one singing voice became two, then three, and finally 4. The Skull Kid spun wildly, unable to find the magic source from the plaza center. Blackened stones surrounded him, though the clock tower remained untouched at his back. Great, thundering footsteps came next.
They were never that big.
The imp realized, trembling.
What did this protection spell do to them?
The footsteps grew louder and more thunderous, and the voices kept echoing and commanding the very skies as they sang. The Skull Kid's hands grew sweaty, and the gem threatened to slip from his grasp.
No, stay calm.
And then he saw them, the 4 giants. The faces of his former friends could hardly be found in their new bodies. Long, powerful legs were disproportionate to round, oafish bodies. Their faces were wrinkled and old, almost like the witch's now that her gem was gone. And the imp noticed that the giant's gems were missing too.
They sacrificed them in the protection spell,
The imp realized.
to become this.
One giant stood in each cardinal direction, as had been foretold. He turned between them, shaking as the deities surrounded him, peering into Clocktown's plaza as if it were a toy display. The surviving villagers kept their distance, dazed by both their guardian's arrival and the imp's destruction. The Skull Kid turned one final time to the southern gate, and the giant who stood behind it. The man once called Farron spoke with the wrath and power of an entire land.
You have tormented, destroyed, and stolen, Skull Kid. You have angered the guardians who slumber in their temples.
The Skull Kid's lips trembled as he failed to find words. The giants were so much taller than even the clock tower.
You're my friends, and I wanted to see you.
He felt like an ant before such dangerous, imposing might.
We have chosen to guard the people while we sleep.
Farron said.
100 steps north, 100 steps south, 100 steps east, 100 steps west. You struck terror into the hearts of our people with your wickedness. In these dark times, wickedness cannot be permitted. It will only hasten Clocktown's apocalypse. In the name of our past friendship, we will consider banishment to the world between worlds. Otherwise, you will be obliterated here and now, and your wrath will be tossed into the endless abyss that is oblivion.
The Skull Kid's eyes widened.
No, we're friends. That's not what friends do. You can't kill me or banish me. We're friends!
You will return the gem to Kome. She and her sister no longer remember their reasons for entering this realm, and are no longer a threat to our cause.
The Skull Kid's mind was blind with panic. He tried to think of a solution as he looked around.
I didn't think far enough ahead,
the imp thought.
I need a plan.
He looked to each exit of Clocktown. They were all guarded. There was no way out. Unless...
No! You can't make me!
The imp threw a ball of fire as his red gem glowed. It traveled toward the giant's face, who had once been named Farron. The Skull Kid ran for the clock tower, never stopping to see if his spell had worked. He threw open the ornate wooden doors, and briefly felt their warmth. The Skull Kid ignored every instinct in his body telling him to turn back.
You can't pass through the doors. You're not meant to. This isn't home.
But he had nowhere else to go. The imp ran across the dark stone, passing beneath the distant gears and above the rushing water. As he sprinted, the Skull Kid heard stone splitting and cracking. He turned around briefly to see something else enter the clock tower. Something unnatural. It was a young tree given sentience, and its eyes glowed with Farron's emerald magic. Between the doors opening, the imp saw the plaza breaking apart to make way for more magical creatures. Enemies. The Skull Kid leapt over the platform's railing. He landed on a hard floor just before an open doorway. There was a stone hallway inside. It seemed to stretch deep beneath Clocktown.
Don't enter,
his body told him.
Don't enter, please, don't enter. You're not meant to be here. It will rend you apart from the inside out. Go back, go back, go back, go back.
He saw the wooden creature descend toward him, effortlessly gliding through the air, and it had friends now. Too many of them. The glowing green eyes were narrowed into threats, and their long, flexible limbs traversed great distances so much faster than him. The Skull Kid sprinted inside the hallway. As soon as he did, a burning sensation overpowered every fiber of his body. He collapsed. The red gem spiraled from his hand. His mind swam with an unknown heaviness, but somehow the imp found the willpower to stand and keep running. He grabbed his gem, ignoring the growing mystical dread of the world between worlds. A wooden hand grabbed the Skull Kid's shoulder.
No!
He screamed. He flung his hand out, and the minion burst into flames. He kept running, watching as the stone hallway cracked around him too. Magical vines forced their way through the hall's walls and floors, destroying the beautiful architecture as dark hands reached for the fugitive. The imp's mind was in a panic as he leapt over newly formed arms and legs, descending into darkness and uncertainty. In an instant, the beautiful place became a ruin, wrought by a guardian's justice. The Skull Kid's lungs fueled every step. It all became second nature. The fast approaching spell, its spawn, and the flawless stone warping and twisting. The imp had no idea how long he sprinted. Eventually, a newly created monster grabbed him again, its vine wrapped around his ankle, covered in thorns. The Skull Kid collapsed, screaming as he squeezed the witch's gem. He let all his bottled fury loose. The explosion was a bomb in the underground maze. Fire erupted all around him, destroying everyone and everything. When it cleared, the imp remained on a lone pillar of stone, jutting upward from a newly formed crater. It began to teeter, and the Skull Kid scrambled to his feet, looking for a distant ledge. He jumped for it, barely grabbing the floor's jagged lip as the pillar collapsed behind him. He gripped the gem carefully as he pulled himself up, his feet dangled above the newly formed pit's gaping maw. The abyss rejected him. As stone debris bounced downward into darkness, his body spoke to him again.
It's there,
He thought.
it's down there. It will obliterate me with infinite light. I will be seared into nothing but a stain of soot upon the ground.
Falling was not an option. The Skull Kid scrambled to pull himself out, and he did, but more forest people emerged from new crevices as Farron's spell continued. There was no time to rest, so the imp kept running. He eventually made it to an open room. The imp stopped when he realized it was a dead end. The room was large, and dirt walls extended up into infinite blackness. 2 unlit torches stood nearby, flanking a pond with a deku flower in its center. The Skull Kid panted, spinning around to look for an escape, but there was none. The only way out was through the tunnel, which the hostile forestry paraded through with unmatched vigor. He was trapped. The Skull Kid faced Farron's army and raised his hands. Then, there was only fire. It enveloped the newly formed creatures, who writhed as they turned black as soot and died. The imp screamed as the steam of magic never ended.
You will not take me!
However, he noticed a plant growing beneath him too late. In an instant, the young tree trunk shot skyward with alarming speed, sending the Skull Kid flying. He spiraled into the pond as the gem left his fingers. Before the imp could stand, a wooden minion now held the witch's gem. It watched him alongside its brethren with those wicked green eyes.
No!
The Skull Kid screamed, reaching out his hand, but another vine sprung upward, grabbing his wrist and forcing it to his side. Another soon followed, restraining his other arm and his legs. The plants forced him to his knees as the most terrifying of tree people approached him.
In the name of the guardians that protect this realm, I sentence you to 1,000 years of imprisonment for tormenting the citizens of Clocktown. Your cell will be this world between worlds. May Pharaoh have mercy on your soul.
The branches holding the Skull Kid crept upward to encase him. More roots broke from the soil, lifting the imp skyward as magical bark closed around him. He screamed as loud as he could, but his shrieks were silenced when the wood slithered over his mouth. For a moment, there was darkness, and then the bark fell away to reveal a translucent prison. It was a clear emerald rock, shaped like a diamond and levitating far off the ground. The Skull Kid was suspended inside. His head remained craned back, and his mouth was open in a silent scream. Could not move. Even his hearing began to fade. The imp watched as the trees with glowing green eyes left through the passageway, taking the witch's gem with them. They brought down a heavy wooden door to seal off the entrance. The Skull Kid was left alone in the underground room. Nothing but silence accompanied him. Soon, even that was robbed of him as his vision melted away. The Skull Kid fell into a deep sleep. The present. The winter storm had calmed, but the cold had not. Snowhead had still chilled his bones. The imp trudged through snow, holding his shoulders as he shivered in the bitter wind. It was late. The Skull Kid had walked all day and night. The final day's horizon was only hours away. Eventually, he reached the cliff where the shadow fell.
I've learned so much since then,
the imp thought. All he'd thought about during the trek was death and its purity. It was the only reliable friend he would ever have. The Skull Kid cried as he approached Majora's mask. It lay in the snow, undisturbed. The imp knelt before it, sobbing as he scooped the relic into his hands.
Why am I crying?
He wondered. This was a joyous occasion. He should feel triumphant, but instead, loneliness nestled itself in his chest like a heavy stone.
Death will save you,
the Skull Kid thought.
Death will save everyone. I'm sorry,
the Skull Kid said as the tears froze against his cheeks. He held the mask carefully, staring into those deep orange eyes.
Please, please, forgive me.
Of course, you will always have a home in the darkness.
The Skull Kid sniffed as he got to his feet. He brought the mask closer to his face, and immediately, Majora's protective embrace eased his wary mind, though that bitter, bitter cold only grew. Several years ago, he heard a crack. It snaked across the green diamond's surface. Suddenly, his eyes fluttered open, and the world returned with an alarming clarity. His prison shattered, and the imp fell into the pond below. Green shards shone alongside him as they sprinkled along the shallow water. The Skull Kid stood, but he felt weak and numb. The imp looked around dazedly, blinking at the large, empty room. Memories came back slowly.
The red gem, he thought. The giant's song. My friend, sending tree people after me. The chase through the tunnels.
He half fell toward the dirt wall concealing the passageway. It didn't take him long to find the notch, and he slid the door open, passing through to the dark tunnel on the other side. It was terrifying. The Skull Kid could scarcely see as he plodded through the darkness. Eventually, his eyes adjusted, and he saw the hallway was in ruins. The plants had torn open gaping holes in the dark stone, and weeds had grown even more during his imprisonment.
I am a ghost now,
The imp thought.
How long have I been asleep?
He remembered his enemy speaking a number too impossibly vast. There's no way he'd been imprisoned that long. Surely Farron had shown him mercy. The underwater river greeted him as he approached the final hallway to the clock tower. He anticipated that overwhelming dizziness as he passed through. He easily overcame it. The Skull Kid walked up the ramp, onto the platform, and past the spinning wooden pole. The imp placed his hand on the doors leading into the plaza.
They're still warm,
he thought. He pushed the doors open and stepped outside. The townsfolk in the main plaza of South Clocktown watched him enter curiously. The door's colorful red markings curved around two half-shaded cyan circles that might be eyes that liked to stare. And aside from the unsettling face-like quality of the artwork, no one ever used the doors, because whenever they opened, nothing good came of it. As long as anyone alive could remember, only one other visitor had entered through them. An old man had stumbled into the sunlight and lain down on the pavement, a huge smile on his face. He died right there before anyone could do anything about it. And now, oddly enough, a child stumbled out of the doors. The Skull Kid felt like he was on a stage as the villagers watched him. Their eyes lingered for the longest time, and the imp could do nothing but stare back. Eventually, they returned to working at their stalls and crossing the plaza.
Do they really not know me?
The imp wondered. He didn't recognize any of them. Each face was new, and he hardly recognized the plaza. The Skull Kid felt even more ghost-like as he walked to the East Clocktown staircase. Despite several suspicious glares, the villagers were too afraid to approach him. He walked to the mayor's office and approached the front desk. An older woman stood behind it. "How may I help you?" she asked, looking down at him. The child's clothes were frayed and dirty, and his eyes appeared to harbor a deep sadness. "Where are your parents?"
Can I speak to the mayor?
The imp asked. The woman seemed hesitant, but eventually she nodded and led him to the back room. The Skull Kid walked inside. A young woman sat in a chair beside a large desk at the office's end. She looked up at the imp and smiled. A baby rustled uncomfortably from her arms. An equally young man sat behind the desk and turned to the visitors. "He wanted to speak to the mayor," the old attendant said uncertainly. "It's okay, Mom." the woman with the baby said. Cafe is just being a little fussy, that's all. We were going to put him down for a nap. I'm sorry, the attendant said. He's just a child and he looks so lost.
Do you know the song?
The Skull Kid interrupted everybody and approached the desk. The mayor narrowed his eyes.
What song?
The song to call the guardians.
He said.
The giants.
The mayor, his wife, and the older woman exchanged glances before bursting into laughter.
Is this the urgent news you came to see the mayor for? Sweetie, those stories aren't real.
The Skull Kid's face went blank.
Farron told me the people would forget them, the imp thought, but I didn't believe it.
The Skull Kid didn't press the matter. He simply walked out of the office without another word, leaving the 3 adults and the baby behind. The imp roamed around the city for the rest of the day. He didn't see a single familiar face. The town he'd tormented had died off long ago, and a new generation had replaced those people now likely turned to dust.
Of course they've forgotten,
the Skull Kid thought.
No one is alive to remember.
Though memory was always a tricky thing in Termina, he'd remembered his friends trying to convince him that Oaks something had existed across Woodfall. He shook his head.
No one knows what's across Termina's borders.
He also knew that the Guardians were still sitting in their temples, uncaring, cold, powerful, wicked. Clouds eventually swept away the setting sun, and rain soon followed. The imp left Clocktown through the southern gate, searching for a familiar face. He failed. Once he was too wet, the Skull Kid tried to think of somewhere to go.
Nobody knows me, he thought. I don't have a home anymore.
The imp found a hollowed-out log to hide inside. He curled into a ball and sat there. He cried while he shivered from the cold, wet night. He rocked back and forth alone.
They left me,
he thought.
They're gone forever. They hate me now. They really left me.
The memories tormented him like nightmares that wouldn't go away.
Fables. Legends.
He continued sobbing as the rain barreled down outside. At first, he didn't notice when a purple and white fairy flew into the log with him, searching for shelter of their own.